an interview. I mean, I print up the script, but I didn't print up.
Welcome to the Author's Edge radio show with Guy L. Freer and Bob Price. Now, their show airs nationwide on the My Genre Radio Network, Monday through Friday at 2 p.m. and 7 p.m. Each week on their show, they help authors create books that transform our lives and imaginations. Through radio excellence, they create a unique community resource, one that promotes, connects, and fosters a sense of well-being. Gael and Bob maintain a focus on sharing books, publishing, marketing, and writing solutions. They serve listeners by providing outlets for their creative skills and energies, and they help them flourish in the competitive marketplace. Their weekly show provides intros, writing spotlights, helps you in promoting your book, your writing, your publishing, your marketing tidbits, and much more. Okay, audience, here's Gael and Bob.
Hi, Bob.
Oh, it's Gael.
So
You're back from Warsaw, aren't you?
I've been back for a while now.
Oh,
Yes, I'm back from Europe. We had a wonderful trip. So now tell me about these emails that you keep telling me that you sent.
well, they're emails that were in authorsedge.com, and you should have read them.
And you didn't send them to me. Did you look at your you did not
I
send
said-
them.
yeah,
You
I
did
did.
not send them.
Yes, I did.
No, you didn't.
I will check when
You-
I get home.
Yeah. Well, check because you did not send them. See?
No, I didn't send them. I sent them to your email.
And I looked on my email and they're not there.
Okay. I will double check to see. It's Gael Freer at Outlook.com.
.com. Right. And you did not send them. You did not send them. Now, you want to tell us who we have in front of us today?
How do you handle it when you get back from Warsaw? You're just on
Warsaw. We didn't go to Warsaw.
Oh.
But if you're looking to start a war, we can do that. And you know what happens when we start a war.
We're here and we're ready to introduce Michael Allen.
Okay. That
He's
sounds
our-
like a much better idea.
He's our guest today, and he's a retired banker of 35 years from Poplar Bluff, Missouri.
He probably had a lot quieter life than you did.
Yes. But Michael attended Missouri State University in Springfield, Missouri, before returning to his hometown to work in a locally owned bank where he'd spent his entire career, focusing on project management for the last 22 years. During that time, he also attended graduate school of banking in Colorado and countless professional development seminars as both an attendee and a panel participant. Mike and his wife, Kelly, right?
That's right.
Of 38 years, have two married daughters who have blessed them with 4 amazing grandchildren.
Wow.
He's recently completed a manuscript that talks about his experience in creating an exit strategy that allowed him to complete the transition from his daily career responsibilities into retirement with little disruption, which will hopefully result in a book entitled Finish Well.
Finish well. As opposed to finishing unwell
Or not finishing well.
Yeah,
not
or
finishing.
not
There we
even
go.
finishing.
There we
or
go.
not even finishing.
Yes.
Ooh, that does not sound
That's
like
like
fun.
me.
No,
I retired twice.
you retired twice.
I didn't finish well.
I only retired once.
Michael,
I'm
yes.
working on the
welcome.
second one.
Thank you. Thank you for having me.
Welcome, Michael.
Thank you.
He's like this all the time. though.
Okay.
Yeah.
Well, it's a
Can
bit of
you
a comedy routine here.
Briefly introduce yourself and share your background as a retired banker with over 35
Well,
years
sure.
of experience.
Yeah.
Tell us a little about how you.
How you got into banking?
How I got into banking. That's
Other
an
than the fact
interesting
that-
story.
that money is a colorful.
Yes. Dead presidents. It's good.
You like
Dead
it
presidents.
green, right?
Yes.
Ooh, dead
Yes.
presidents.
So, that's really good. So actually, I had gone to college to be an accountant. My dad and I had talked about that. He wanted me to be an accountant. I was majoring in accounting with a minor in computer science, and got to my junior year and decided after a class I walked into, and I thought, okay, I didn't didn't register for Greek, but here I am. And I walked out, and the instructor said, "You're changing your major, aren't you?" I said, "Yes, I am." So I got my manuscripts out and started scouring through them and trying to find what I could still get out in the same amount of time with. And it happened to be a finance major. So I ended up in finance. Well, that wasn't good enough for the school. You had to actually pick an emphasis.
Right.
And so you had to pick, and in those emphases in that day were investments, real estate, banking, insurance, and general business, something like that.
Mm-hmm.
So my dad was a banker. So I thought, banking, that sounds pretty good. So that's actually how I ended up in banking. Not necessarily a stellar start, but didn't.
Not
Yeah, it
necessarily
is.
the front door, but maybe the back
a
door.
That is a
little
stellar
bit.
start.
Well, I
Yeah.
kind of got into education that
You
way.
completed
Not through the front
your
door.
college education.
I did.
And began your work and came home.
Came home. We were living in Springfield, Missouri, and expecting our first child, and got an opportunity to go home and work for a family-owned community bank in Poplar Bluff. And at that time, it was First National Bank. Later, it was renamed First Midwest Bank, Poplar Bluff, and I spent my entire career with that bank, with the family.
One bank.
Yeah.
Wow.
Well, actually, there's a group of banks. They own a group of banks, and it's gotten down to two through mergers, acquisitions, consolidations, and different things within the group. But for the same family organization, yes, I worked for 35 years.
35 years.
Yeah,
With
great
the same,
family. Yeah,
Great with the same family.
yes.
Wow. Same family, 35 years.
And actually, I had two mentors. I slipped this, and I had two mentors there that when I first started, that you kind of pick a mentor. You don't go someone and ask them
Mhm.
typically to be a mentor, because that kind of scares people. But the person that I worked directly with, I worked with Dennis Smelser, and he was my mentor. Jerry Dorton was another one. And I worked with them my entire career, and they were still there when I left. So,
Oh, my.
yes,
Wow.
yeah. So
That's like a family.
it is.
Yeah.
I'm telling you, it is like it's a work family, but you spend as much or more time with them, it seems, sometimes, than your actual family.
So you worked your entire career with this
Yes,
one bank. You
yes.
stayed in Poplar Bluff your
Yes.
entire lifetime.
My whole life, yes.
And I'm sure you did some traveling though,
I traveled with business,
Uh-huh.
so we would go to different places that the bank would send me,
Uh-huh.
and so I would go to different seminars and different schools and that type of thing. But as far as travel, we've traveled a little bit on our own, but not a whole lot
Mm-hmm.
either.
Where were you in Colorado?
Boulder, actually, University
Oh,
of
okay.
Colorado, Boulder.
All right.
Uh,
I
2
used to
weeks.
live in Denver for 10 years.
2 weeks of summer for 3 years. That's kind of how the banking grad school
My husband
works.
spent some time in Colorado.
It's a beautiful place.
Yeah.
I figured if I was going to be away from family, it had to be someplace beautiful. So, had to pick Colorado.
It's a lot of fun.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And how did your time at the Graduate School of Banking in Colorado contribute to your professional growth?
Well, they usually it's 2 weeks of summer for 3 years, and then you have problems in between that to work them.
For example,
Well, let's say investments. So bank
Mhm.
investments, banks invest in different things. So they have different courses of either investing, how to structure a portfolio, which is a commercial portfolio. How do you get your return? And then asset liability management, the ALCO managing your asset structure to your liabilities so that your spread
okay,
is
talk
good.
to somebody
So,
as
okay.
if
Okay,
they
so
have no clue.
a bank's assets are actually loans. They're not deposits. It's just the opposite of what you and I would actually think.
Oh, okay.
So your assets are your accounts, right? And those are liabilities to the bank, because you put it there in our trust, and then we owe you that money. So that's how that becomes a liability.
But you loan it out, don't
So
you?
just like you've seen the movie "It's a Wonderful Life." Have you
Uh-huh.
seen the movie "It's a Wonderful Life"? And George explains, your money's not in here; it's in Bob's house, over
right,
here. So
right.
it's the same type of thing. You take it; it's a fractional reserve system, and you reinvest it in other assets, which would be the loans that you make to the community and to other people, and then they pay you back, and then you get paid interest on your account. So that's the
Okay.
circle of life.
I
in
guess
banking.
watching all the banking issues and changes recently
It's quite something. It really is. We went through it back in the 80s a little bit as I was coming into banking. We had the financial crisis in '08 of the mortgage bubble burst. And now it's the fintech's turn, the fintech's time.
What is that?
So
Explain that.
financial technologies companies.
Okay.
They come along beside and either offer a service or a product that the bank can offer, take and reoffer
For example,
mobile banking. The banking on your phone, that app that's on your phone is probably not the bank's app. It's probably owned by another company that they're using.
So, for example, like some of these banking companies that are not brick and mortar, like us. I don't want to throw out names, but like companies that are not, because I don't want to sound like I'm pushing any company, because there's two that I know of, but they're not brick and mortar companies. They are companies that offer banking.
strictly online.
Huh?
Strictly online.
Strictly online banking. How are they different from like what you like a Midwestern bank, for example?
Sure. There are some that are actually strictly online. There's online banks then that are structured to just do business online, but they are capitalized like a bank. So they have the investments from investment community that go back into the bank, and then they reinvest those assets. So they're capitalized like a normal bank, but they're just do business online. There are others that aren't
moving money.
That would be one, yes. And there are some.
Oh, is that a company? I'm not even.
There are some that
moving money is the name of a company.
No.
There are some that.
Doing.
Oh, okay.
That's one of the things they do. So there are lots of those.
What was it? I've got a friend back in New Jersey that works for one of the banks in New York, Manhattan, and all he does is just do trading for currencies.
So two of the ones that you could consider, like Venmo and PayPal. Let's talk about those. Are payment services that you pay me or pay, but they're not banks. No, but they hold your money.
Right.
And like a bank would hold your money.
Right. But like a company.
But they're not insured either. So.
Right. Okay. Like a company like SoFi or a company like, there was another company, Relay-Fi.
Don't know.
Yeah, Relay, RELAY-Fi, Relay-Fi it's called, or Mercury.
Okay.
All of those are not brick and mortar companies, but they are banking companies.
They are some of them. I've got one, and I can tell you for sure. Rising Bank. It's actually out of St. Louis. Was here. They're part of the Midwest Bank Group. Not our Midwest, but a different Midwest Bank group. Strictly online bank. Rising Bank was they were. When you go online and look at Rising Bank, it actually has a footnote that says, the deposit is held at Midwest Bank Center, and so it's basically, think of it as a branch of that bank. But so it's just not a physical branch. It's a non brick and mortar branch.
What is the difference between those banks and a
personnel? Basically,
it's just
brick and mortar.
No, it's
just
more
what
personal,
you said.
because you really go to the bank and you can see people and you deal with them, and basically the deposits end up being spread amongst the community because you're making loans that are in that community.
Okay. Where
the online bankers really aren't. They're really behind the scenes money exchangers. Because they're using.
That's pretty good That's pretty good definition. I like that. Yeah.
They're really using money from investors.
So which is better?
There isn't.
Well, it depends on you, but
yeah,
I'm a community banker, so I'm going to say community bank every time.
Yeah, it's really because you can sit down with somebody and personally examine what you need, and
there's about 4,800 banks in the United States right now. When I started in banking in the late 80s, there were over 14,000 banks in the United States. And so through consolidation, mergers, acquisitions, it's gotten down. You think, okay, well, the banks have gone away, so maybe deposits have shrunk. Absolutely not. Deposits are about 10 times what
Okay.
they were in the United States then at that time. It's just it's held by fewer institutions. So about 4,800 banks, about 4,000 of those banks are community banks, banks that live and exist and breathe in your community, that can sit across the table face to face, and that reinvest back in the community and small
Okay.
businesses in the
So
community.
then, all right. So you're saying community banks are
Mhm.
really the thing.
Yes.
How about like the big banks, like Bank of America?
Well, they're big banks.
Chase.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Well,
chains.
They basically just are kind of a mixture of online and
They are huge. They
Right.
are what the Fed or anybody would call large. So over $100 billion in assets. Most community banks are under 10 billion. The regionals are anywhere from the 10 billion to the 100 billion. So it pretty vast
Okay.
range.
So those are the differences.
So those are kind of the differences in there.
but,
And
Okay.
but it's where the big banks really, Manhattan or San
Mhm.
Francisco, get involved in mergers and acquisitions
yes.
and financial services
And they
to a corporate community
Mhm.
to a great
Mhm.
extent.
They do, and it's more of an economic economies of scale. You know, the larger they are, the more they can invest. Most of them are public, if not all of them. Of the
Mhm.
large banks
And
are
like
public,
the community banks, are they public?
mostly privately held.
Privately held.
Either investor family or investor group, usually. So very much reinvested back in the community.
Okay, so could you share a memorable experience from your banking career
Oh, wow.
that significantly impacted your perspective?
Oh, significantly impacted my perspective. There was a couple of different ones, I think. One was actually a piece of advice I was given when I first started
Uh-huh.
banking. One of the gentlemen I mentioned, Dennis, had already he kind of already taken me under his wing a little bit, and he asked me. He said, do you want to know the secret to longevity in any career, no matter whether it's here or anywhere else? And so this had to do with my community bank experience coming up. And I said, sure, who wouldn't? Who wouldn't want to know that?
Right.
And he said, find something that's necessary, that you like to do, and become very good at it. He said, in that way, whenever they think of whatever that is, they think of you. And
That's
I thought,
excellent
okay,
advice.
I thought it was great. And now he and I differed a little later on. He said that he told me, find something that you like to do that's necessary,
Uh-huh.
and become very good at it. And I said, I don't remember the like to do, but okay. And so I did. I found numerous things over time. I was good at projects, and I liked running projects in the banks. And then
For
I had
example, like what kind of projects?
well, what we were talking about before, I knew information technology. I knew the computer side of the bank, and because I grew up in the operations side, anything non-loan related. Think non-loan related in a bank, and then that's what I did. So my dad was on the lending side of the bank, and I had experienced that as a kid. Did not want to deal with that or deal with anything with it. But I grew up
Too many people.
Well, it was just a lot of phone calls, phone calls on the weekends and at night.
Yeah.
And I thought, no, I'm not going to do that. So I spent my my career on the operations side. So the computer side, the deposit side, anything that was non-loan related is what I did.
When did you get your first computer?
Oh my. I think it was, let's see. Well, the first laptop, personal computer, or actual desktop computer had to have been around 88, 89, somewhere in that area. It was, yes, that's a long, and I've forgotten the question now. I've been so,
So
we were chasing
So you're
that.
a real DOS man, aren't you?
Yeah, DOS man.
Yeah,
I did have a little DOS. Yeah, a little DOS. Yeah.
I think it was that might have been around the time when I got my first, maybe 90s. Maybe I got mine in the early 90s.
possibly. Yeah.
Yeah.
I beat you all out.
Why? When did you get your first?
43.
1943?
No. It was 1979.
Oh wow.
Oh, wow.
Did you get a Macintosh?
Yeah, I had to hire somebody to come in and put it in our home.
Oh, wow.
And I was trying to run my wife's business,
Uh-huh.
and had to hire somebody to come in and do all the DOS stuff.
Right.
It was-
yeah.
Yeah,
No,
it's a different-
I think it was early 90s when I got the first personal computer, and I had it in my I had a spare bedroom that I put it in.
Yeah. Sounds
But
familiar.
when Windows came along, it like changed the
Yes.
Change the world. If you look underneath the hood, there's still a little DOS running.
There
Yeah.
was. There was. When you looked under
Yeah,
the
there
hood,
still
there
is.
was, there was still a little
There
DOS
still is,
running.
yeah.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
world. How
So-
did you transition from banking
Mhm.
to writing?
Well, that's an interesting conversation too. We were at a conference in Nashville. It was a banking conference actually, and my wife and I say she went with me on most of my bank trips like that. And I was at a conference. I had just been in an afternoon session and walked back to the room and said, this guy was amazing that I was listening to. He had done a speech, like a 45-minute speech, no notes, none whatsoever. Was impressive, very
Mhm.
impressive. And I said, I kind of like that.
Mhm.
And so we transitioned from that conversation to retiring. And she said, well, what do you want to do in retirement? She said, maybe you should.
When you grow up?
Yeah, when I grow up. I haven't got there yet. And she said, well, maybe you should speak. And I said, well, I'll think about it. She said, well, you're always critiquing these speakers about what they said or what they didn't say or how they said it. And I said, well, maybe so. So I went from there to writing after a conversation with a consultant friend of mine. I had a consultant friend, Joshua Jacobs, and he had asked me once I started the transition to retirement from what I was doing to retiring, I had to come up with this strategy, this plan. And so I started writing this exit strategy for my job. And as we did that,
You truly are a banker, right?
I did.
Yes.
I have a written
Yes.
plan for everything in the bank anyway. And so I backed up and he said, have you thought about writing that down and sharing it with other bankers that are in your same
Really?
situation? He said, there are a lot of community bankers out there that are either nearing retirement or at retirement or thinking about it that would love to, but don't really know the steps to go through to get there or don't feel comfortable with them. And I said, no, I don't know. I don't know about that.
Well, we're going to finish this up in
Okay.
a minute.
Yep.
But
You're
in the meantime,
listening to The Author's Edge with Gael Freer and Bob Price. Gael doesn't get her emails, but
wait,
Bob
I get my
does.
emails.
and we're coming
Someone
to
doesn't
you-
send
we're-
them.
We're coming to you weekly on Saturdays at 10 a.m. and on KWRH 92.9 and KXOK 102.9 and Monday to Friday 2 p.m. 7 p.m. nationwide on the My Genre Radio Network, who has 100 cities. You can also view our latest videos from past shows at authors-edge.com online and download valuable information on marketing and publishing.
All right. And you're going to give us some marketing tips?
Yes, I'm going to give you some marketing tips.
Well, so you did do your homework this time. Well, it's about time.
The teacher in her is
I can hear it.
showing up. Yes. Yes. It's time to make some long needed changes in order for you to get you to where what you've been on the hunt for.
So what exactly are these changes?
So, what exactly will change? I have to turn the page.
You have to turn the page?
Yeah.
So what are you going to change?
Number one, you're thinking yourself. Stop saying should or need to. Just do what must be done. Forget the past, set the goals for the future, but live in the present and execute daily. In mind and body, and we're going to ask you about that, about your process of writing.
Okay.
But number two, your network. You're only as good as who you know. Get to know more people. Number three, your resources. Be willing to invest more time, money, and mind share into your writing career. Outsource to others what you can't or won't do. Grow your writing business. You need to take risks. Number 4, experiment. Be willing to sacrifice one thing for another. There's no playing it safe if you want to advance and far and fast. Number 5, your schedule. Pretty simple solution here. After how you spend your time, we each get 168 hours a week. How you budget your time to maximize efficiency and success. Number 6, your habits. Change what you do, how you do it, how much you do of it. And if you blog twice a month, shift to weekly. Be disciplined, determined, and deliberate in your efforts. And number 7, your skills. If you learn more and acquire new skills or brush up on old ones, you can accomplish more and do things that you don't have to pay others to do. Lifetime learning is what we all must do. I can't emphasize that enough. You have to continue to learn and want to learn. And that's it.
Yeah, lifetime learning. That's what got me from retirement, from teaching to what I'm doing now. And we are going to go to commercials in 1 second.
You mean it's a real break?
That's a real break.
This is Arnold Stricker of St. Louis In Tune on behalf of the Dred Scott Heritage Foundation. In 1857, the Dred Scott decision was a major legal event and catalyst that contributed to the Civil War. The decision declared that Dred Scott could not be free because he was not a citizen. The 14th Amendment, also called the Dred Scott Amendment, granted citizenship to all born or naturalized here in our country and was intended to overturn the U.S. Supreme Court decision on July 9, 1868. The Dred Scott Heritage Foundation is requesting a commemorative stamp to be issued from the U.S. Postal Service to recognize and remember the heritage of this amendment by issuing a stamp with the likeness of the man Dred Scott. But we need your support and the support of thousands of people who would like to see this happen. To achieve this goal, we ask you to download, sign, and share the one-page petition with others. To find the petition, please go to dredscottlives.org and click on the Dred Scott Petition Drive on the right side of the page. On behalf of the Dred Scott Heritage Foundation, this has been Arnold Stricker of St. Louis In Tune.
The United States has a strong tradition of welcoming newcomers and refugees. The Welcome Corps is a new service opportunity for Americans inspired to welcome those seeking freedom and safety and in turn help strengthen their own communities. Welcome Corps is a public-private partnership that is inspired by what Americans represent to so many around the world, a beacon of hope and refuge. All it takes is a helping hand. Are you ready to learn more? Contact the International Institute of St. Louis at info@iistl.org or call 314-773-9090. That's info@iistl.org or call 314-773-9090.
El Potro Restaurant and Market, located at 6920 Manchester Avenue, 1 block east of McCausland, offers the finest variety of Mexican and Central American groceries and goods. El Potro Restaurant serves authentic Mexican and Central American cuisine, including daily specials, not to mention the best horchata and tastiest margaritas in St. Louis. Open 7 days a week. El Potro, 6920 Manchester Avenue, 1 block east of McCausland.
And we're back talking to Michael Allen, and I have a quote here that you shared with us.
Okay.
If you didn't show up today or ever again, what would they do to cover what you were responsible for? Who would they call? Who would they ask for help? Contentment is learned, not earned.
Yes.
You will never earn your way to contentment. There was a point that I felt my career moved to the point of a calling in that I wanted to leave the place I worked a better place, that I found it. And I wanted to help others in that process, which leads us to your book.
Okay.
And your book is
Finish Well.
Finish well.
Finish Well.
That's
So
right.
tell us about that.
Okay. Well, right before the break, I was telling you about who kind of inspired the transition of writing it down was Joshua Jacobs, and he had asked me if I had written a book about that or would write it down and write down a plan. I said, no, I don't think so. He said, we need to write something. Well, I kind of dismissed that. And then a little bit later, I was talking to my pastor about it. He asked what I was going to do in retirement. And I told him kind of what we're doing here, a little bit of a download of my career and what everything. He said, have you ever thought about writing that down? And I thought, maybe there's a recurring theme here that I need to write this down. And so I started writing. So I bought a book about writing a book, and thought, no, it's just not the time yet. And I was having a little trouble with the speaking career, thinking about speaking or finishing my own career. And my wife said, you just need to finish well what you're doing. And so that's where the title of the book actually came from, and started with that idea. I was sitting one morning, I do a quiet time in the morning, and just thinking about, how am I going to do this? I have no idea. I wasn't really focusing what I was supposed to focus on or thought I would needed to.
You should ask your wife.
Yes, that's it.
She's the inspiration.
She is the
creative
inspiration.
person, I can
Absolutely,
tell.
100%. And so I had this thought of, if you didn't show up today or ever again, what would they do? And I thought, that's it. That's where I need to start the plan. So I started writing the plan down from almost a crisis management standpoint of, okay, if I wasn't there, what are the things they would have to know? Who would they go to? And what would they do, in my absence? And from there, I actually started writing, just committing the plan to kind of a list. I didn't really start writing the book till after I retired, but started creating the plan from how I would exit, how I would get through my career. My president had asked me, he said, how do we do this? Because he and I are the same age. And he said, we've never been here before. So he said, how do we get out of this to where you do it well and we do it well? How do we both get out of this? And how's it going to benefit the company? And I thought, well, we're going to try that. So that's where it started, was almost from a crisis management standpoint. Starting at the end, I had about 18 months to write the plan and get through the process of transition and training and selection and all of that you have to do when you're trying to exit. So,
but your mind and your training has really set up the inspiration to that, to put all of this. I mean, it completed an outline and a plan.
It did. I had a lot of that. It's starting with the end in mind. So you start there, that Stephen Covey statement of the 7 habits of highly effective people, where you look at that, his is a little bit more morbid than mine. If you've read that or read his book, of when you start with the end in mind, it's actually picturing your funeral and at what people will say about you at the end. Mine was more the end of my career. How do I get there, and then work backwards from there? So picture how I wanted it to look and how I wanted to exit, and then work backwards.
So what is the first thing?
Well, it's actually asking yourself a series of questions. It's more of a self-reflective process, I think, when it gets to there. And you know these well, the discovery questions: who, what, when, where, why, how. When we get into those, first thing you need to figure out is who are you? Who do you think you are? Can you describe yourself without describing what you do? And there's a tendency there for us to, whenever we're asked or introduced, you've been at different functions, I'm sure, and you had asked you a question, and then the very next question after your name is,
you have that elevator pitch down.
What do you do?
Yes.
What do you do?
Okay, are these questions different for men than they are for women?
That's a really good question. I haven't really thought about that one much.
Because for roles, when women are asked about their roles, usually it's I'm a wife and a mother first, and then a career is third on that list. For men, it's their careers are first, and they're a husband and wife, they're a husband and father second and third. And so I'm wondering if you have that set up differently for men and for women.
I don't know that I do. It's a good point to make, though. Yes, I think the identity is.
And that's
you're
why
right on
women when they retire, it's a little bit easier transition, because women multitask easier than men do.
I don't.
Men
I don't think I ever knew a woman that
Men don't
retired.
I don't. I don't.
multitask.
Women
disagree with
don't
that
retire.
whatsoever. That's
Right.
100%.
Right.
Yes.
Gael, women don't retire.
That's true too.
All right.
You're absolutely correct.
And
Oh, don't
speaking-
thumping on the table.
Yeah.
I
And speak-
know.
and
I
speak to
know.
that, I have a gentleman that I actually had lunch with right after I retired, and he was still doing the job. He was one of the mentors that I had mentioned earlier, and I asked him about first question he asked me was, "Do you have any regrets?" I said, "Absolutely not, none. I have zero."
Right.
And we started talking about this exact same thing about the who, what, when, and why. And I said, if you don't have anything that you do beyond what you do, if you can't separate your identity from what you do, you're probably going to have a little bit of a problem in retirement. And he said, I don't know that I'll ever retire. So
When did you start the book?
well, I started after I retired. So I retired in December. I started writing in January. So a little bit of downtime. Grandkids are in school. They're not at the house. My wife in the morning has a routine where she talks to, we have two girls who clean for a living, and they all get on a joint call every morning, and they have this conversation. I didn't want to take away from any of that. So I kind of sequestered myself in my back room and just started writing. I'd write an hour or two a morning, and started just writing it down. And I went through an outline of the book I'd referenced before. It's called Published, Chandler Bolt. I don't know if you're familiar with it or not, but I went through his outline.
I love Chandler Bolt's all online, all the information.
Yes. So I started going through the outline, started writing things down, went through the mind mapping, I think he calls it. And there's some different things in there about how do you do this. I had pieces of paper all over on the walls and on the floor and everywhere. I was trying to figure out how to structure this book and how to get it out of my head. So I just started kind of downloading it, and it was a little bit of therapy as well, to be honest about it. I was kind of, at that point, I was just kind of at the end, and I thought I've got to get it out of my head because it was still running. The reel was still running in the head of everything that was doing. I thought, I think it'll be better if I just get it out. So,
do you have a process or a schedule of how you write, how you handle this? Do I just do it in the morning after coffee, or do I do it in the evenings? Or
morning is better for me always in a thinking state. When I get to the evening, I'm pretty much done. But morning is my best time. When I was doing the writing, I haven't continued it. I wanted to get this book finished. So once I stopped and got to that point, I wanted to get it completed. And then before I start something else, I do have a couple more rattling around in the head of what I want to do. But yeah, it's standing in the morning, just writing it out, talking to myself or setting a chair.
It's become a habit.
It has. And set a chair there or set a chair. That was one of the other things he said, make it conversational. And I'm a very much a conversational person.
You put a chair there? Do you
I
have
have
an imaginary rabbit? Or?
Well, yeah, Harvey. Yes.
Harvey,
One of the things I used to tell my students. No, it was one of the things I would tell my students. You talk to the mirror. Talk to the mirror. Read it to the mirror. And read it out loud. Read it to the mirror. And it works. Talk to the chair.
Talk to the chair.
Talk to the chair. It
or
works.
just talk like you're explaining it. Like I'm
To
explaining
somebody.
it to you.
Right.
And so
It
it's
works
just more
every
of that
time.
conversational
I'll be darned.
style.
It
So
works.
Good idea.
And the other thing is that you can also have if you've got it written already and you've got it typed on your computer, there is a place on your computer that you can have it read to you.
yes.
Okay, so you can also do that.
I was aware of that one. Yeah, I
Yeah,
didn't
and
do that one, but I was aware of it.
You should
So,
try it.
Okay.
It really does help, especially with finding grammatical errors, finding.
What are you using?
Huh?
What program?
It's on Word.
It's on Word.
Oh, it's on Word.
Yeah, and it will read it to you. It will even read it to you in a man's voice or in a woman's voice, and it sometimes even has different
An
accents.
alien's voice.
I didn't know they had voices. I thought it was just like but no,
Well,
it will read
you
it
haven't
to.
met the aliens I have.
Okay.
But no, but if you have it read it to you, it will also, you can find some of your errors in it. as well. So
Mhm.
that's something
Yeah,
that
I've always said it's got to roll off the tongue.
it does.
Yeah.
And that's why having it
Mhm.
read to you will help. And I would
Okay.
strongly suggest that you try that.
It's not very
Well-
long. This one's not very long. This book is not, I don't believe. It's about 20,000 words, so it's
Uh-huh.
not a real long manuscript.
Right. So is it
Um,
do you have it as have you set up the have you formatted
I've
it
got
yet?
the e-format almost finished.
Okay.
I've been working with a young man there in Poplar Bluff I think he's got 7 or 8 books published, Mason Powell.
Uh-huh.
And I had met him through a friend and of ours, and since he's self-published, he said, "Hey, let me help you."
Are you doing a softback copy or are you just doing an ebook?
Well, my plan is to do the ebook and then switch over and then do the format for a print copy and do a soft cover.
Okay.
That's my initial plan. Anyway, I don't know if that's a good or bad plan, but that's my plan
It
right now.
doesn't.
No.
There is no good or
There
bad
is no
plan.
good
It
or
is
bad.
what
Yeah.
fits you. That's what the best plan is what fits you.
Well, let me ask you about
Sure.
what's the manuscript, okay, that you put together.
Mm-hmm.
What are the main ideas and what is the message that you really want to get across?
Well, I think the main idea is I like acronyms, and I'm one of those people that I love to work with something I can try and remember a little better. So I've given a couple of different speeches to our new hires at the company that we were at, and I've used the acronym PACK, for that. And I pick a destination, ask for help, change directions, and know your why. So that's kind of the acronym I've used for them. This book actually was written on one called WEIRD, WEIRD. So it's a weird way to exit your career, but it's also you start with a W with what I call them waypost questions, and it's the questions you ask along a journey where where am I going, how am I going to get there. So it really is the who, what, when, where, why type questions that you go through the first chapter. Then evaluate your options on the E. So it's kind of the E, and you evaluate what can I do. What are my options? Do I go transition out? Do I do part-time? Because there's some companies that allow you to do that.
What are my
part-time
skills?
out. What are my skill sets? Evaluate where are we lacking? What do they need? All of that.
Do I even want to stay in the same career?
Absolutely. That was where I was. I in my evaluation, it wasn't that I didn't like what I did, because I really liked community banking. I liked project management. I did it for the last 22, 23 years of my career. And I liked that part of it. There was just some parts of it that I was done with. And I'm sure as a teacher, I know you know that. So there are other things that you just want to be able to get up in the morning and say, hey, I want to do something else. And that's where I was.
That's where
what
I was.
Was the I?
I is impact or intentionality. So you have to be intentional in your decision making. The I is being intentional in how you draft the plan, what options you choose, who are you putting in as a replacement. So it is that training that you talked about, all those years that I had of creating the plan, being intentional, because we were very intentional in our planning, in our processing. The R is kind of the reevaluate. Because once you get the list and you start creating those things, I actually did it with a piece of paper and a pencil, or a pen. So when I would think of something I was doing, I have to write that down. Okay, this is the process. This is what I did. This is what I did. What all are you responsible for? Trying to write all that stuff down, because you're going to forget something. You just are. That's just the way it is. And so as I went through that process, so the R was the reevaluate. Try to reevaluate where you were, what you were doing. Is that necessary? Is it still is it something that you just did, or is it something you did for you, or is it for the organization? So there's a lot of reevaluation in the process and the people and what you're putting together to replace you, basically. And you can change these up. And the D is kind of depart with confidence is the D, because you get to a point then, and when I did in my plan, about 6 months out from where I was going to be leaving, the young lady we had hired to be my replacement. Actually, there was more to it than that, because we hired a young lady to do the majority of what I was doing. We outsourced to another company a few of the planning things I was doing. And then there was some things called assessments that we actually ended up moving to the audit department. And so it ended up being a few people to
Isn't it always
to-
kind of cool when you realize that
It
you're doing
is.
2 and 3 different
It is.
people's jobs, and
But
you're like,
it's
wow, I was really a valuable player in this game.
but it's a natural process because
Oh, absolutely.
once you become used to what you're doing it and you take on something else, it's just an added layer, and you don't realize you're doing as much as you're doing until you leave and there's nobody else doing it, and then you have to come back and fix it all.
Right.
And then you start thinking, wait a minute, I've got to have help
Right.
with this.
Right.
So so about 6 months out, I started having her do things, and I started having the other people do things, and I just stood back. I just kind of took a step back and said, okay, you guys do what you need to do. I'll be here to answer questions, but I'm not going to do it for you. And so it was an interesting process because they would answer. I had one, I used to answer questionnaires. We would get exams and from the examiners come in, and I would answer these questionnaires for the banks. And then, so we got this last one in while I was still there. I answered. So I sent the questionnaire to the banks to answer instead of me answering it. And I got a call, and they said, hey, we need help answering these questions. I said, act like I'm not here. But you are here. That's the point. I said, no, the point is I won't be here. You need to start answering the questions. And so after a little bit of a
Back and forth,
they said, okay, we'll answer it. So the one young lady that I had been training for the audit part, I picked up the phone, called her, and said, you're going to be getting a call. The bank's going to call you, and they're going to ask these questions. And that's exactly what happened. It wasn't 15 minutes, and they called her and they started asking her the questions, which is really the process. I mean, she should have been included in the process too. So it was neat to just kind of stand back. And then a little closer to it, when the Depart with Confidence, a little closer to the end, I actually set up a banker's box in my office, and it's just a box.
Mm-hmm.
And every day, I would take a little piece of my office of things that were mine, and I would put it in the box. And I would take that home. And about the last week, I actually changed out some of the wall hangings because some of the wall stuff was mine.
Mm-hmm.
And so that when I got down to the last day, all I had to do was walk out of the office with my keys and my coffee cup, and that was it. It's a little bit.
Were there white spots left on the wall?
No. We
No?
hung things. We hung things back up, up where they were. But it was more of a, I don't know, and that's an emotional makeup. That's an individual thing.
Yes.
Some people could walk out and it not affect them. I couldn't. So I had to get to a point that I knew. I mean, this was my place for the last 23 years in this office, and I thought I'm not going to be able to do it if I don't do it piece by piece. So it was a little therapeutic in that instance. And I was able to get all of that downloaded, basically all of it out, and then all of it home. And when I walked out of the office that last day, it was really easy. It was,
Wow.
yeah, it was just really, really neat.
How do you
I can relate
envision
that.
your book impacting readers, who are navigating their retirement planning? So how do you think this is going to impact them?
Well, I hope
What do
that
they want to get out of it?
I hope that if nothing more than the self-reflective process of thinking through, okay, who am I and what do I want to do next in my career? Do I want to continue this career? Do I want another career? Or do I just want to retire? Do I want to be able to get up in the morning and say, I just want to do whatever I want to do today? And that's really the process that I hope it goes through. There's so many community bankers, and I got to thinking about how many, 4,000 community banks out of 4,800 banks in the country or so. So there's potentially a lot of people like me out there.
There are a lot of people headed into retirement in so many careers.
True.
A lot of the things that you went through, I went through. And I was in teaching for 39 years. All right. I taught 5 years in New York, 15 years in Florida, and 20 years in Poplar Bluff. When I left teaching, it was in 2020. We went on spring break.
Oh, and didn't go back.
And we didn't go back, or
That's
I
right.
didn't
I
go
remember
back.
that. Yeah.
But I went through a lot of the same things that
Oh,
you
okay.
talked about. Was what am I going to do?
What am I-
My
yes.
husband and I talked about it for years almost, about when you retire, what are you going to do? I mean,
Okay.
all the peanut galleries back
Okay,
there.
okay.
But no, I mean, there was lots of discussion. So
Sure.
everything that you're
Sure.
talking about doesn't just apply to bankers.
No.
It applies to just about everybody that is headed into a retirement scenario. What do you do?
What do you do?
You know, what are you going to do when you retire? And I mean, all those questions that you ask yourself, you know, do I just want to get up and drink my coffee and do
Mhm.
nothing else? Do I just want to putter in the garden? Do I want to travel? Do I want to start a whole new career?
Mhm.
You know, those questions are all valid questions that we all have to deal with. I remember going through all of my things. Okay, here's the thing. I still have stuff in my basement from when I started teaching 39
Oh
years
my.
ago.
Okay.
Okay. I still do. And Ralph can attest to that
Wow.
because I couldn't give them up.
Okay.
Okay. And I'm starting to. Actually, I'm going to give some of this stuff away to a friend of mine who's just started her career. And she said she would take it. And I don't care what she
Okay.
does with it afterwards.
It's kind of fascinating in a sense. I mean, I've retired twice. I guess I was in marketing. I had a life that was too loosey goosey and in a moving truck, you know. So I'm in Phoenix, Houston, Denver, Chicago, New York City, selling homes.
Uh-huh.
And it was like a revolving door with home builders.
Uh-huh.
I just never really, your mind, I really understand is you have a process and you have a structure to what you're doing,
Mm-hmm.
Mhm.
and you do too.
Mm-hmm.
And I guess I just never had that.
Mm-hmm.
You know, when I got out of selling homes and
Right.
running sales forces, it was just started a mortgage company.
Right.
You know, then I got into internet marketing. I
Right.
mean, so it's different, but you're right in that you need to understand and have a structure to make it work for
do.
you.
You do. And even if it doesn't necessarily have to be as finite as the
Oh,
one
no.
that you have there, or as loosey goosey as yours was. It can be something in between the two as well. I mean, but you do have to have some sort of formulated idea in the back of your head that,
Mhm.
because otherwise, by the time you get to retirement and you don't have a concept going on of something,
Mhm.
then those years go by and suddenly you're like, what have I done? And where
but
am I going?
You're making
And-
all this big money as a radio show host, and
yeah, all this big money. I want to
Wow.
know where all this big money is coming from. But anyway,
Oh, you don't look.
we are listening
Yes.
to The Author's Edge, and we're chatting with Michael Allen about creating an exit plan when retiring. And guess what? We haven't done the second radio identifier, number one, and we haven't done my radio writing tips. And we have 3 minutes, 2 minutes. We have 2 minutes. So,
Go.
classic hero journey. Well, actually, I was going to talk about the narrative, how to write a narrative. There are 12 ways that you can write a narrative. I'm going to give you 6. The classic hero's journey, which is the style that the protagonist follows through transformative journey. Okay? It's like kind of like the Harry Potter thing.
Is that a story about me?
No.
Oh,
Then there's the frame narrative, which is kind of like the Arabian Nights, where each story is nested inside the other.
that's a story about me.
No.
Oh,
And then there's the stream of consciousness, which delves into the character's thoughts and feelings, and it's a continuous flow. It's like Ulysses. Okay. Then there's the linear narrative, which is kind of like Pulp Fiction or a Memento type story.
That's like me.
No.
Oh.
Then there's the fairy tales or the folk tales, which is like Cinderella and Little Red Riding Hood. Yes, that's like you. Okay, ladies and gentlemen, we are down to our last minute. Thank you so much for listening to us. Michael, it's been a pleasure having
Pleasure's
you.
mine. Thank you for having me.
Remember
And
the book?
The book is called
Go on
Finish
Amazon.
Well.
We'll
It's not
figure-
yet on Amazon. It
But
will be there
Finish well.
shortly.
Yes.
And thank you for tuning in to Author's Edge. Tune in again next time for more tips, resources, and your favorite conversation. Our next guest will be Mary Lane Camberg, and we will be chatting about publishing and books. Till then, see you around the inkwell.
Splash.
Anything for our second interview? I mean, I print up the script, but I didn't print up